The sound of Essex.
Breakfast with Sonia Watson.
BBC.
BBC Essex.
Thanks, Smithy. Morning, Essex. Hopefully a brighter day in store for us here in the county this Thursday, the 9th of November. Hope you're well today. Next on the show, though, we're talking about the pro-Palestinian marches that have been happening every weekend in the capital. One scheduled for this Saturday as well. A lot of discussions from politicians, from police this week in terms of whether this weekend's, with it being Armistice Day on Saturday, should go ahead. But we're asking, should a march calling for a ceasefire in Gaza go ahead as scheduled in London this weekend? The Prime Minister and Home Secretary believe the protest on this Saturday, which is of course Armistice Day, should be stopped. Organisers have said the protest will stay away from the Cenotaph. They'll march from Hyde Park to the US Embassy. So it's a way away from the Cenotaph itself, and it's not going to start until the afternoon, so after the 11 a.m. silence. Well, Essex Police's Chief Constable BJ Harrington says his officers are following the law to the letter when it comes to monitoring any similar events here.
Of course, you'll have seen protests, and I know there's been protests in Essex. And for some people, people have very different and opposing views. Some will say it's distasteful, it's wrong, and it shouldn't be allowed. We deal with the law, and whether we like it or not, and, the Human Rights Act gives people, democratic society, the freedom of thought, expression and assembly, what's called the right to protest. It doesn't give them the right to break the law, but it gives them the right to come together and express those views. However horrible those views might be, if they don't break the law, then actually policing's got a duty, and it's part of our, rich tradition in this country of allowing people to do that. So we will, and that's why, we're not stopping any of these protests in Essex, because we haven't got the power to do that. However, what we are doing is making sure that we're working with those groups to make sure they don't break the law, to make sure that, that there's no retaliation, and that they are, that they understand the issues. And I want to say that, however offensive some people might find that, the work we've done so far is some of the groups have been very, very considerate. And when we've said, look, do you realise the offence you might be causing, you're not committing? They said, OK, we'll have one example, we'll have a silent protest. Because they don't want to cause it, but they do want to make their point.
That's BJ Harrington, Chief Constable of Essex Police, and we'll be hearing more from him in a few minutes' time. First, just coming up to 8 minutes past 8, let's bring in the Conservative MP for Rayleigh and Wickford, Mark Francois, who is with me today, former Armed Forces Minister. Morning to you, Mark. Thanks for coming on.
Good morning, Sonny.
What do you think about the march scheduled for this weekend? Should it go ahead?
I don't think it should. I have great respect for BJ Harrington. He's a very good Chief Constable of Essex. Roger Hurst is a very good police, fire and crime commissioner. They make a good team. But my view is it is Armistice Day, followed by Remembrance Sunday. I declare an interest, if you like. My late father, Reginald Francois, was a D-Day veteran. He was on a minesweeper called HMS Breslau. I've got all his naval papers at home. So, I always feel remembrance particularly poignantly because my dad died when I was 14, and I always think of him as well as all the others who fought. But there are 51 other weekends in the year. These people could hold their marches on those weekends, and I think there would be far less criticism. I just think, they know what they're doing. They're doing it quite deliberately. And I just think it's in very poor taste.
They've been doing it every Saturday since that dreadful attack by Hamas at the start of October. So it's been going on every weekend, hasn't it?
Yes, but not every weekend is Remembrance Weekend. This is different. This is special. We come together as a nation to commemorate those who died so we can live in a free country where people do have the right of protest. But I think they shouldn't abuse that. And I think to do this deliberately, it's quite deliberate, on Armistice Day is in extremely poor taste. And part of the reason I say that is a few weeks ago, we had an incident at the Cenotaph in Whitehall, which is our national monument to those who died so that we could be free. It is hallowed ground. But a pro-Palestinian protest was set up, with a sound stage and loudspeakers at the Cenotaph, for goodness sake. That should never, ever, as a site be used for any kind of political protest by anyone at any time. It was absolutely outrageous what happened. And then there was a great debate about who allowed it. Some said it was the Met, some said it was the mayor. Actually, I don't think it was either of those. As far as I can tell, it was Labour-run Westminster City Council. They gave permission. I think that was an appalling decision, and I very much hope that our national site of commemoration of the war dead will never, ever be defiled in that way again.
They're not going to go anywhere near, certainly on this Saturday's event, they've said to police they're not going to go anywhere near the cenotaph, and it's happening much later than the 11 a.m. silence.
I understand that, but my point is this still happened several weeks ago, and it should never, ever have been permitted. Westminster City Council should never have given permission. You know, there are all these other places all over the country where they could have made their point, but not at a memorial to our war dead. It was
and there's no suggestion they're going to do that this weekend, and they're calling for a ceasefire, they're calling for peace. So isn't that poignant in itself that it's taking place this weekend?
Sonia, I understand they're not planning to go to the cenotaph, but I did want to make that point about what happened a few weeks ago. So I sort of, that's why I just wanted to take that opportunity. Look, there was a ceasefire of sorts for many years between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Hamas broke the ceasefire. They invaded part of Israel and murdered brutally over 1,400 people. Hamas broke the ceasefire. They're now calling for one because Israel is taking military action to try and prevent that from ever happening again. And you know, I serve on the Defence Committee, and, you know, behind all of this is Iran. They finance Hamas, they finance Hezbollah. All of this ultimately is being controlled from Tehran, and I think it's better to be realistic about that. That said, I've had over 100 emails from constituents about this issue. I've replied to them all, other than any that may have come in this morning. And I said in my reply that whilst under international law, Israel has a right to defend itself, they have to do that in accordance with international law. So international law applies to Israel as it applies to all of us.
And bringing it back to the protest then, you say you don't think it should go ahead. What do you make about some of the language that's been used by the Home Secretary in particular, describing it as a hate march? Would you describe them as hate marches?
Well, from what BJ Harrington's saying, the protests that have, say, taken so far in our own county in Essex have not had that character to them. But, you know, having seen some of the footage from some of those marches, and when people shout from the river to the sea, what does that slogan mean? It actually means the complete wiping out of the state of Israel. That's what those words mean. I would argue that's pretty blooming aggressive, isn't it?
As we've heard, though, anyone can hijack a protest. People who go there with different intentions to the vast majority of people that want to be at that rally or demonstration or event. It doesn't necessarily mean it should be stopped because of other people with not so genuine intentions, perhaps.
Well, so to be clear, I've not said that I think the police should ban the march. They do have a legal power to ban it. I'm not saying that that's what they should do. But I am saying I don't think it should be taking place because I don't think the people who are organising this should be doing it on Remembrance Weekend. So to come back to what I said earlier, I think it's an incredibly poor taste to quite deliberately do it on Armistice Day. I say there are 51 other weekends in the year when they could make their point. Why do they have to do it on Remembrance Weekend, particularly after what happened at the Cenotaph a few weeks ago?
Mark, thank you for coming on this morning. That is the Conservative MP for Rayleigh and Wickford, Mark Francois, on BBC Essex. If you want to get in touch with your thoughts, you can WhatsApp, text or give me a ring. We will be talking to Sidra Naeem next on The Breakfast Show, Muslim chaplain from Brentwood. 8:17, and we're talking about a story that's actually on a lot of the front pages again this morning. Rishi Sunak, Prime Minister, warning the Met Police Chief, you'll take the blame if the protest is violent this weekend. That's what the Express and the Mail are talking about. And this is Sir Mark Rowley, who's the Met Police Commissioner, Commissioner, who has resisted calls, says the Express, to stop marchers calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, saying intelligence on the potential for serious disorder does not meet the threshold for trying to ban it. And as I said, these marches have been going on, these rallies, for the last few weekends in central London. You might have seen it if you've been in town lately. And of course, this Saturday's scheduled to go on. It's not going near the Cenotaph, according to organisers, but it's scheduled to happen this Saturday afternoon. And this Saturday being slightly different, of course, because it's Armistice Day. We've just heard from Conservative MP for Wickford and Rayleigh, Mark Francois. He says he doesn't think it should go ahead. He thinks it's in poor taste. Let's bring in now Sidra Naaem, who's a Muslim chaplain from Brentwood, now on BBC Essex. What do you think about what Mark Francois had to say? Is it in poor taste, Sidra? Good morning to you.
Oh, good morning. I think, first of all, the Remembrance Weekend part, the protests have been happening every Saturday for the past couple of weeks at least. And it's just purely by chance that this weekend actually falls on, the Remembrance Weekend. But the march is actually taking place after the 11 o'clock silence. It's taking place well after that, into the afternoon. And it's completely avoiding the Cenotaph area as well.
Do you think, given all of those things that you've just outlined there, then, that it should go ahead as planned?
Yes, I think that freedom of speech is allowed according to law. And even Sir Mark Rowley, the police have said that, there is no absolute power to ban protests according to law. And it's a way of people expressing their opinions. There is no other way, really, that the public can express their opinions if they are not in Parliament. It's a peace march, and it's really to stop innocent people being killed, and that's on both sides. It's actually calling for peace. So that I can't really see it being a bad thing there. And the past record we've had of the peace marches that have been happening until date have been very peaceful. So I think that according to the police decision, I think that it should go ahead.
Some of the sort of footage that I have seen, and there has been some arrests, but I guess with any large gatherings, for any cause or any issue, there usually is some sort of arrests, isn't there, made? But there does seem to be a lot of people from different faiths, different backgrounds participating in this. I wanted to sort of talk about some of the headlines, really, and some of the comments that have been made in the last few days by politicians. I mean, Suella Braverman, I mentioned to Mark Francois, has described them previously as hate marches. What do you think about that, Sidra?
No, I think that they're peace marches, and nowhere has it been written that it's a hate march. It's definitely been portrayed as a peace march. They are all peaceful protests, peaceful marches. And it says peace everywhere. So, I don't think that that's true at all. It's actually to stop innocent people being killed on both sides. It's for everybody's good, because innocent people are being killed in all of this political problem. It's a political problem, really. And they're calling for peace, and that's not hate.
How have events in the last few weeks affected your community, Sidra?
I think people are very upset, obviously, because innocent people are being killed. And I just think that everybody now, I think, is just beginning to wonder now whether we just need to stop everything now. That there has to be an end now. And the only way really is to stop everything, and so that there's peace. There won't be peace otherwise, will there? Then there will be more hate. And that's why this march is taking place.
Sidra, thank you very much for coming on as well this morning. That is Sidra Naaem talking to us on BBC Essex. Your thoughts on it, welcome, 0800 111 40 41. As I say, Rishi Sunak had a meeting with Sir Mark Rowley, Met Police Chief, yesterday to talk about this, and Rishi Sunak saying, this march will go ahead. Of course, the police are keeping a watch on any developments, intelligence they may receive in the build-up to that. But Rishi Sunak describing the plans for this march on Saturday as disrespectful, but also acknowledging that people have a right to peacefully protest. Police are saying there is a threshold, quite a high threshold in terms of any planned intelligence or information that they might receive about any serious disorder or potential for serious disorder at these sorts of events. And that threshold, in his view, at this stage has not been met. He says intelligence on the potential for serious disorder doesn't meet the threshold for trying to ban it.